by that I mean, by what I came to that care is the action that supports the ongoing life of somebody or something. Yes?
Neuroscientists have said that females get more of the neurotransmitter oxytocin, right, from bonding and caring.
Right.
Males do not.
Right.
Now again,
until they become fathers. And when they become fathers, apparently they get a shot of oxytocin. Yes?
As you see, I'm having difficulty listening. And the reason is that I don't really understand why you're making a distinction between women and men. When you basically started out with this is a human character trait. Some have more dominant character actions and so forth than others. But when you say that women primarily caretake, I just can't resonate with that because in my experience, men very much care for life. They tend the hearth. They help the hearth be there in order for continuation. They can't deliver babies, they can't feed them and so forth, but they can bring the food so that the mother can do that and so forth. So I have problems with separating those two because then I feel excluded.
Right.
I feel that only women can be compassionate and empathetic and life-giving. And then so I say, well, where do I fit on the... and so I feel like I need to defend.
Right.
And I don't want to do that. I want
right.
to
and that's exactly what I meant. That's what and I'm glad you said that because, you know, that's what... If we were in a group of white people and black people, can guarantee that somebody would... They probably wouldn't have the... They wouldn't feel comfortable saying it, and I'm really glad you did. But it, you know, they would feel like, well, and my example is, you know, I was raised to think all people are God's children, and they're all the same, and I love them all, and I really, really do. What I never got until I really worked with a lot of African American folks and got to know them and really did walk in their shoes is that I had no clue what their life was like. I knew what it was to be a white human, but I had no clue what it was like to be African American in this culture. Now,
so how does that apply to the gender?
Because most men don't understand the experience that women have giving care. And you may, you know, you may be one of the folks on the far end. But let's just, as an anthropologist, look at, for example, the other night I watched a film. It was called Life in a Day, and it essentially scanned the entire planet. It gave videos to different people around the world on July 4th, 2010, and people showed what they were doing on 2010. In almost every culture, women are the ones getting up carrying water. Women are the ones getting up with the children every day. Women are the ones that are thinking about whether there's enough food, whether they have enough to save for the future versus feeding the family that day. The men, and I have an example in my book about this, in Hispanic culture, the men are punished. The boys are punished if they help the girls with the housework. The girls and the women are told that they are supposed to do the housework. So, in general, around the world, it is the women in the homes who are tending the hearth. That doesn't mean that men, especially in this culture, don't have a role. I mean, clearly they do. They do so much. They do so many things. You know, and one of the things I learned is what they think about doing in a family, for example, is carrying in the wood, fixing a lamp, taking care of the animals, slaughtering the sheep, or, you know, but it's episodic. It's a project that starts and stops. And And then there's another project that starts and stops. And what oftentimes men don't understand is that for women it's a continuous process. It's not one project after another. In the background, there is this constancy of getting up every day and doing the same thing. Every day they get up and they do the same thing. And depending on the culture, it takes all day. Yes?
So, I guess I'm struggling with what I'm perceiving as gender stereotyping, when what you're talking about is what is cultural, right? So you are a woman, but you were taught
That's
to be a woman,
that's right.
right?
I was taught to be a nun.
I won't go there.
Well, actually, that's exactly where it is.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but you said that you didn't have the training to do these tasks that you have identified as
Right.
as female
Right.
in allocation, for instance. And so I don't want to debate that
No,
with you. I'm just curious, so what?
Yeah.
What's the takeaway in terms of caring, in terms of what we're talking about? Why should we care that in most of the world, the women are the ones that are doing this and the men are doing something else?
Well, one reason is because the women are dying and they're getting sick because they've got 2 jobs when the men have 1.
Some women have 2 jobs and some men have 1 job. Some men have 2 jobs, some women have no jobs. You know, so what I'm, you know, I'm having trouble
Okay.
figuring out what the relevance is.
And I'm talking about the central tendency.
Okay,
Okay. Yes, Jane.
Well, an impression is that this issue of gender stereotyping got off a bit in the beginning when there was an idea that caring and empathy came more with women. And I'm hearing, I think it sounds simpler when the point is made more when you talk about multitasking, when you talk about continuity of flow from one task to the other, that is more part of the acculturation of women and the experience, both through time and still. And not an issue, and within that, their empathy or the caring may be shown differently or expressed differently or conceptualized differently, but it isn't to say that women care more. And that's
No, it
I
has
just
nothing
thought
to do
that
with whether
needed to
they
be
care
clarified.
more.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just.
Yeah, there's the need for a defining. I mean, which is really where we started. I'm going to ask one more piece, and then so you can take it from that. What I hear you saying is speaking to that which women do, the space that women hold. I think most people can hold that without a defensiveness or without a problem. That there somehow, and it varies culture to culture and person to person, but there's this burden, responsibility, holding of space that women do. And the moment, it's almost like when the word care gets introduced, everything gets screwed up here. Because I can hold that. There's the space in most cultures, women do this, they hold the place for birth, they hold the place for nurturing of children, they hold the place for education. So many of these things. And if we just spoke to that responsibility, or, I don't like the word burden, but to that, we could have a clear discussion about that. But entering the word care into it all of a sudden creates, I think what we're seeing is this defensiveness, and so the word confuses, and it stirs it in a way that creates some pretty strong feelings about what it means. So it's like some of this is needed somehow, but in not defining it from the outset, it's a little thick, and you can feel it in the room. The energy is a little thick.
Yeah.
Isn't there more of a universal sense of care?
I'm sorry, Gary?
more of a universal sense of caring, more of a sense of caring that transcends or is independent of gender or culture roles.
Well, what
That
I'm
there's an
saying
individual
is,
human expression.
Well, you could use compassion for that, and then it's not gender at all.
Yes.
Or you could
but
use,
that's not care.
that's
that's
why the
only-
definition
that's
is
That's why
needed.
definition is important.
But the point is that it's defined differently by different groups.
Okay.
And what my research showed was that on the spectrum of care, men defined it differently than women did.
Okay.
For women, care is their whole work. For men, caring, first of all, in language, men rarely use the word care, unless they're speaking of empathy. They don't talk about care. In fact, there are studies that you can tell who wrote a note by the language they use, and men don't use the word, they use other words. So there is conflict. It isn't universal. And some of the tension that exists in marriages, in the world, in relationships, has to do with the difference between men and women's relationship to care, to care in its totality. And by that I mean, and here I'm really going to get on, we all know that most of us in the room realize that in Western culture, we are all inflicted with dualism, right? Does anybody disagree with that?
What do you mean by dualism?
Dualism,
Mind-body or?
dualism means that, beginning with people probably way before, but Aristotle made it popular. He said that women made men weak, and that light and mind were, is that wrong?
No, that's right. I was just saying, he was green.
I say he was wrong? No. He was old, long time ago, but you know what? It stuck. And it stuck with all of us. Just like African American kids think white dolls are preferable to... Women think men's work is better than women's work. Men think men's work is more important than women's work. Men think talking about the universe is more important than talking about changing diapers. So do we, don't we? Exactly. The body is not something that boys like to hang around with unless they're having sex. In most cultures, women are taboo. They're locked away when they have their period. Bodily fluids, the kinds of things that women have to do, both in giving birth and dealing with sickness, vomit, the whole kind of down-to-earth, in-the-ground work that women do. And mothers do it in families. Alan had to do some of it. I don't know all the things that happened with his wife, but I suspect he did. And I suspect he would suggest it was a change for him, that it wasn't a place he hung out with and before this happened. Was it?
I didn't go looking to change diapers, if that's what you mean.
Other
It's
than
happened before.
you had kids, I assume. Either that or you were a nurse's aide. But so it's a place where women, let me say the role of women, the traditional role of women. Now lots of women opt out of that role from the very beginning. Look at Joan of Arc, she opted out. I mean, women all their lives opted out of that role.
But somebody has to do it for the next generation.
But somebody,
Probably a woman.
and my point, and Margaret Mead's point, actually, I did not make, I discovered Margaret Mead had this figured out before I did, and I was pissed. Because she didn't tell me.